Haruka dreams of someone locked in a dungeon who decided to remain alone. When he wakes up, he realizes it was a strange dream. He heads to the guild, still tired and sore from his encounter with Tanaka. At the guild, he meets the nerds, who are heading to a dungeon where they heard there is a special item. Haruka asks what it is, and Oda explains that it can supposedly change the way people think and feel about you. Haruka believes the nerds are in dire need of this item, and they remind him that he is not one to judge. Haruka is glad to see that his friends have become true adventurers. Now that he has found the nerds and defeated Tanaka, he has no reason to stay in the city, so he decides to return to the forest and live happily in his cave. However, someone disagrees with this plan. The class rep is furious to see that he is planning to escape again and asks to speak to him in private. Haruka begs her not to scold him, as he received quite a few scoldings from the girls the day before. But the rep says that he hasn't received any from her, so she asks why he did something so dangerous on his own. Haruka is terrified. The rep tells him to never do something like that again. Haruka agrees, and with that, the scolding ends. Haruka realizes that Tanaka is not as scary as the class rep. He thinks about how he can get back home without bothering her, then remembers the nerd's item. If he can change the way others think of him, he can use it to avoid bothering them when he leaves. He then decides to head to the dungeon. Meanwhile, Marielle goes to the office of her father, the mayor of the town, to offer him some tea. The mayor is somewhat concerned, as monsters have been attacking the city's borders, making trade difficult. He knows that without trade, a city is lost, so he's requesting help from other places. At that moment, a guard enters with disturbing news. A horde of monsters is attacking. Haruka walks calmly toward the dungeon when he encounters a group of orcs, who will serve as a good warm-up before entering. The guild leader assigns the representative to handle the monsters on the road. She accepts just as Marielle arrives with news of the orc invasion and that a neighboring village has been completely destroyed. Upon hearing this, everyone in the guild prepares, determined to fight for their city. The representative offers her and her companions help, as they'll need all the hands they can get. The representative heads to the inn to alert everyone, only to notice Haruka isn't there. Meanwhile, Haruka faces the orc horde, having never seen so many before. There's even an orc king among them. Haruka continues defeating the orcs, realizing they won't be much of a problem. All the adventurers gather at the city entrance, eagerly awaiting the horde's arrival and the start of a fierce battle. However, further down the road, Haruka easily defeats the orc king, the last one standing in the horde. He notices it's strange to see so many gathered and wonders briefly why, but shrugs it off and continues to the dungeon. He finally arrives and uses his invisibility cloak to slip past the guard unnoticed. The place is eerie, and Haruka wonders how many adventurers have walked these halls and what stories these walls have seen. He decides to stop daydreaming and remembers his mission, to find the item that will make people like him. He searches the halls and soon finds his first treasure chest. He opens it excitedly, only to find useless items. He continues exploring, opening every chest he finds, but the item he seeks is in none of them. He realizes he has very little information about it and thinks he should have consulted an expert beforehand. Then he remembers the weapon seller, who is knowledgeable about dungeon items. Maybe he knows something. Haruka decides to return to the city to investigate. At the city entrance, the adventurers are still waiting for the invasion, but now they're more anxious than excited, starting to wonder if the information was false. Marielle, a bit uncertain, warns them that the horde should be arriving soon. Then they see something approaching. Through the smoke of the fire appears Haruka, who asks the representative why they started a fire. Thinking for a moment they're having a party, she informs him of the neighboring village's destruction and the impending attack on the city, also asking where he has been. Haruka struggles to come up with an excuse, and the girls get annoyed because he always worries them. The adventurers ask about the orc horde, and embarrassed, Haruka admits he defeated them all a while ago. Everyone is stunned to hear this, and Haruka asks what the problem is, and if they plan to play at hitting the orcs. The girls get angry, as he always ends up running into danger. Back at the guild, Marielle and the guild leader scold him for being so reckless, warning him that things could have gone wrong and making him promise to be more careful. That night, Haruka thinks that more and more people are looking out for him, which complicates his plan to return to the forest. Now more than ever, he needs that strange item. The next day, he goes to see the vendor, who begs him to leave, as he can't allow him to ruin his merchandise again. Haruka reassures him and says he isn't there to buy, just to get information. He asks about the item that changes people's minds, and the vendor assumes he's referring to the pheromone ring located in the nearby dungeon. Haruka, upon hearing the name, realizes the nerd's unsavory intentions. Haruka asks where in the dungeon the item is located, since he searched the entire first floor and found nothing. The vendor explains that something like that wouldn't be on the first floor, but in a place no one has ever reached, likely around the 50th floor. Haruka asks how many floors there are, and the vendor replies that it's suspected there are 100, but getting through them isn't as easy as he might think, as he must defeat floor bosses and boss monsters to descend further. He also mentions that legends speak of an emperor of the dungeons, a figure shrouded in many mysteries. He advises Haruka to stock up on recovery items before attempting to advance. Haruka takes his advice and heads to the warehouse to buy what he needs, disappointing the vendor for not purchasing his items. Meanwhile, Oda tells the girls about Haruka's plan to get the pheromone ring, and they all agree that such an item in his hands would be dangerous, so they decide to do everything they can to stop him. Haruka happily runs to the dungeon, excited about another solo mission, when he discovers that his whole class is following him. Haruka complains, and the representative asks if he's planning to obtain the pheromone ring. Haruka tries to lie, saying he's actually looking for Solomon's ring so he can talk to animals, but no one believes him. Haruka then tries to escape by running into the dungeon, but the class follows. The guard tries to stop them, but there's not much he can do. Inside the dungeon, Haruka worries that if the representative gets the ring before him, things could get complicated, so he tries to get ahead. The representative warns him not to run, as there might be traps. Haruka doesn't listen, trusting in his luck stats, but trips and falls into a deep pit. The representative tries to help him, but fails, and Haruka falls for a long time, knowing that even if he manages to land, he'll be finished. As he nears the bottom, he uses a spell to soften the ground, cushioning his fall. He realizes that the Great Fall has taken him down to the lowest level of the dungeon, where the dungeon master and traps await. Knowing that this is too much for him, he tries to use his airwalking skill to climb up, but it's no use. His only option is to look for another exit. Luckily, he has his spatial awareness and trap detection skills. He decides to combine them and discovers that there are no traps, and that he's actually on level 101. Now he assumes he'll encounter a secret boss. Meanwhile, the representative guides her classmates through the dungeon, determined to find and help Haruka. As Haruka advances, he senses a powerful magic around him. He reaches a door and knows he has no choice but to go through it. As he opens it, a wave of dark, twisted magic hits him. There, he sees a strange figure with a skull face waiting for him. A level 100 monster. Something he's never seen before. The group decides to camp on the 47th floor, and Oda explains that the teleportation doors that appear allow them to return to the surface after clearing the current level. The girls wonder if Haruka might have used one of them to go back up, but Oda doubts they appear along the route he took. The leader of the athletes reassures them, saying that Haruka will find a way to return. But Oda is worried that he may have encountered the Dungeon Emperor, who is so powerful that even the Dungeon Master bows to him. This worries the girls, who hope it's just a rumor, but they've also noticed the strength of the enemies they've faced, all above level 40. Some think it might be best to turn back, but others remember that Haruka has saved them on more than one occasion, and now it's their turn to return the favor. This motivates the others, who are willing to go as far down as possible to rescue their friend. Meanwhile, Haruka evaluates his enemy, but for some strange and dark reason, all his skills and stats are hidden or marked as unknown. He knows it's a lich, and thinks Tanaka wouldn't have stood a chance against something like this. It's the most powerful creature he's encountered since he arrived. He assesses his options. Knowing that liches are magic experts, fighting from a distance would be a fatal mistake. He'll have to try to engage it in close combat. Haruka uses his incredible speed to close in and attack. There's no turning back now. The Emperor easily blocks his attack. Haruka seizes an opening to use his custom skill, but once again, the lich blocks him. Haruka is determined to surpass his enemy's abilities. If you've reached this point in the video, don't forget to leave the word Exquisito in the comments. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.